you know.
It's a good thing to say good morning.
Let's say good morning.
All right, guys. We're going to start the show, and we're going to tell people good morning. Here we go.
What is the cost benefit, of saying good morning or not?
We don't want to raise people's hopes up because it may not be a good morning.
How about Guten Morgen?
Yeah.
Scheiße.
Or Buenos Dias? Or is that good day? I don't know what the Spanish one.
Good morning, everyone. Taviginari here from eliteguitarist.com, and it is my great joy and delight to welcome here John
Storie.
Wait.
As you can tell, we're not having any fun.
Yeah.
John Storie and Larry Koonse, two great titans of the jazz guitar. I'm going to just kind of insert myself into the shot, just like this, John.
That's good.
Is that good?
That's good.
Perfect.
That works.
So, without any further ado, I think, guys, good morning. Thank you for being here. Can you play something for us? This is a live stream specifically for the jazz track. And can you tell us what you're going to be playing? And let's get started.
Yeah, man.
Sure. I'm such a big fan of Tavi's that I thought it might be nice to play a piece that sort of ties in classical elements and jazz elements. And this is a tune by Benny Golson, the great tenor saxophonist, entitled Whisper Not. And it's got a progression, especially at the beginning. The bass motion just screams Baroque music. So we're going to improvise over that for a little while, then we'll introduce the song, and then John will perform his magic, and I'll perform my magic, and we'll get to the end somehow. This is a first, by the way. John and I have never played this live, and we didn't discuss it.
No.
So this is the nature of the music, right,
I know,
John?
So we're setting ourselves up for failure there, aren't we, Larry? We're really raising the bar here for all of our classical friends who prepare pieces for 8 months and grow nails like this. But the spontaneity of it, I mean, hey, I'm down, especially after the year we've had. I'm in as many spontaneous, collaborative duo performances as we can possibly play. Larry, just before we start, I feel like it's appropriate for me to say, everybody, I have studied with Larry now for about a decade. I consider him to be one of my most important mentors on the guitar. I've learned so much from Larry in our times, just our lessons back at CalArts, and all of his recordings. And it's every time I get to play with Larry, it's just, it would be like getting to play basketball with Michael Jordan. So, man, I'm so stoked to get to play duo with you, man. I could hardly sleep last night.
Likewise, John. Yeah. We just warmed up and got levels and everything. I'll stop jabbering right now. But it was such a delight and a joy to play with John again. Just to feel that time center and that shared sense of going to a place, a journey.
Yeah, man.
Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Okay.
I see Anthony Wilson says hi, by the way, on the Instagram. Hey,
Anthony Wilson.
What's up?
Oh, my God.
Thanks
Anthony
for hanging.
Wilson is my hero. God. Now I'm nervous.
Bar's high.
Do I have to start this by myself?
Yeah, I think you should,
Okay.
Larry. You're the teacher. Let's see it.
Okay. Is that you getting level, Tommy?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Cool.
wings.
I know exactly. How does that work again? Oh yeah, I'm not practicing anymore. I got to perform. So
Beautiful job.
gotta get some innings. Yeah, Larry, man, Bernie, great to play with you, man.
Likewise.
Ooh.
All
So,
right. A couple of questions.
Oh,
First of all,
absolutely.
this is a great opportunity. You guys can't see me. I'm out of the shot, and I probably should stay out of the shot. Increase the visibility of this live stream. So during these lessons that we recorded for Elite Guitarist, people get a lot of great instruction, but they don't know some of the details of your lives. Have you ever played that game, Two Truths and a Lie? Don't give us the lie, but give us some stuff that's perhaps unexpected that people may not know at face value. Like, I just learned something about John this morning. Can you tell us about those glasses, for example?
Oh, about my glasses? Well, okay, so do you want two truths and a lie, or do you want to learn about the glasses, or both?
Whatever you want.
All right, so two truths and a lie. I used to collect mechanical pencils. I went to state for bowling in high school, and I had a pet turtle. So any one of those three, two truths and a lie. Larry, what's your guess? Well, you already know. So
Mechanical pencil?
no, I had a big I collected mechanical pencils. I was one of those kids.
Oh my god.
That led me to jazz guitar eventually. And yeah, and glasses are it's funny. It's like there's a gig I do, and glasses are kind of a funny thing. It's like the people who wear glasses on that gig wear these kind of big, thick plastic, wide-rimmed glasses, and so it's been kind of funny. Like, I never thought of that with this career of being like a guitar player. Like, oh, I should have like a thing besides the kind of guitar I'm playing. Oh, I'll wear cool big glasses or something. So I don't know. Maybe in 20 years I'll look back and think it was silly, but I don't know. I mean, fashion's a big thing when you're a jazz guitarist. Just ask Larry. I mean, the mustache, right? We miss it, but I mean, it's great. It's coming back. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've seen some videos of Larry from the 80s. Yeah, that mustache is...
Yeah, I had to get rid of it.
Oh man! You remember the Cal Arts recital my senior year? The student that did Memorial for a Mustache.
Yeah, that's right.
Was the theme of his
It was
jazz
a
guitar
tribute to
recital.
Larry.
So yeah, man. No, it's fashion guitar. I mean, look at Segovia. He had great fashion too with his glasses for sure.
I see. There's the signature trademark.
Yeah.
What John is not telling you, because he's so humble, is that actually he's the musical director for Jeff Goldblum, and has an endorsement for these glasses through this glasses company. I mean, so we're with a legitimate star here on the scene. I mean, I have no endorsements.
Did you hear that, Diodario? Larry has no endorsement. Yeah. No, well. Tesla, maybe.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm a big advocate of electric cars.
Yeah.
So I have a Model 3, and it's my pride and joy. I'm not into things generally. I love music, and I love family, and I love food. But things generally aren't my go-to. But this is one thing that I love. This is besides for my first Apple computer.
There we go.
Which was amazing, And
Yeah.
Steve Jobs, of course, had this sort of artistic view of things. The bevels had to be right, and an iPhone feels just a certain way in your hand. There's something about that kind of craftsmanship that meets art that I love, and Tesla has that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Guys, it's fun to hang with you guys. I'm so glad we can be here, and Elite Guitarist. It's funny too. It's been a really important part of my year, and getting the word out about it, and it's been fun to exchange with you, Tavi, how the students are doing with the materials. So this is great. I hope we get to do more of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, what has the year been like for you? It's been a crazy year.
You want to go first with that one?
Yeah, so I teach at Cal Arts, California Institute of the Arts, where actually Tavi lives in Santa Clarita. And at this point, we're only teaching remotely. So there's the hope that we're going to go in and do some hybrid teaching next year, which would basically look like meeting in a classroom with maybe 3 other students. Like for an ensemble, that's really important because the live music interaction has been missing. So it's been a particular challenge to actually maintain a full-time teaching load at CalArts via Zoom. And the biggest challenge has been ensembles.
Oh,
So basically what I had to do was get my recording chops together. So I bought a really nice collection of mics with John's help. John is a whiz when it comes to all things having to do with recording, especially from my perspective, because we're very similar. We're both jazz guitarists.
Right.
We play similar instruments. We have similar tastes. So John has been particularly instructive in this pursuit of putting together this recording studio. And it's been really satisfying to actually finally have a couple of recorded examples that I think are my favorite sounds that I
There you
actually
go.
engineered.
There you go.
You know,
There you go.
because
Awesome.
we all love our sweet spots, and we're familiar with that. And you're tweaking constantly. You're moving microphones and figuring out the software. And it's mainly not the software. It's mainly microphone, getting a fine microphone and understanding how to position it.
Yeah, and you know, I think what you're talking about, Larry, too, has been something this year that's been really fascinating for me, is this idea now that we're so used to hearing our sound, our tone in an acoustic environment, like in venues, in studios, with other musicians, and you work on that tone, you work on your touch, and we work on like our approach to our sound, dialing in an amp or what kind of amp we're using. And then this year, all of a sudden, it's entirely now hearing my sound through a digital medium, through like a computer. And so I bought a little gear and invested in how to get a better sound plugging into the computer, and how to get a sound that feels right to me, because so much of what we do with jazz, electric jazz guitar, has to do with the feel of the instrument, the responsiveness of the instrument. And man, this year really reminded me how much of that is really playing in a space and playing with bassists and drummers, and so this year was fascinating for me. And like, I spent months where I just completely heard myself through headphones, through a digital interface, and I wanted to embrace that challenge. And I'll be honest, like, it got frustrating, but that's, as musicians, we have to adapt. We always have had to adapt, and this year just really brought that out. So I think that's been the most fascinating thing about this year for me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both of you guys have some background in classical guitar.
Mm-hmm.
How did the classical guitar kind of factor into your jazz trajectory?
Well, it's actually funny. It's flip-flopped for me. I started when I was 6. I had a classical teacher I studied with until I was 13, and he was an awesome teacher, and he got me right away with all the basics. And I was very fortunate to get to have a teacher like that. That he was really just a classical player, but he also loved Jobim, and he loved jazz, but he didn't play a lot of jazz. And so the classical technique helped me in high school and college really approach the jazz guitar with that functional skill. And now what's funny is I feel like playing jazz for so many years and transcribing solos and getting into the spontaneity of the music has actually helped me, when I go back to classical guitar, play those pieces. So it's funny, it's not that the classical music has made me a better jazz musician. It's almost like the jazz music now makes me a stronger classical guitar player. And I've loved this year, that has been actually a real treat, having that extra time at home to just get that cup of coffee going and pull out the classical guitar and play through, you know, all the Gaspar Sanz stuff, the Villalobos pieces, things I worked up for years, and that has been a real treat. But I do feel like it's flip-flopped, that the jazz now informs my classical playing.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
I can
Larry,
see it.
what do you think?
I can see it.
Yeah.
You know, John actually performed for Pepe Romero when he was 10. Is that right?
Let's take 8.
And he was very kind, right?
Yeah, I did some Rasguiato for him. And he was like, man, that's a great right hand. And then years later, I applied for a scholarship. I laugh with my girlfriend Ashley about this all the time. I applied for a scholarship, and I, rambled, and I said, I play some flamenco guitar. Oh, let's hear it. It's like, okay, so I just got that Rasguiato out and just played a little bit, and, they were really impressed, fortunately.
That was in Oregon.
That was in Oregon, where
Yeah.
people don't really know flamenco guitar as much. Yes,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
John, I have something.
Sure.
Actually, the first time we met
Yes!
was at a
Yes.
master class, and this kid came to play for Christopher Parkening.
Tavi, it was 20 years ago this month.
Are you serious?
It was May of 01 because it was May before
And it was
9/11.
John?
And we met at the Master's College. And
I happen
Tavi,
to have
there
that
it is,
picture
right there.
Wow,
There I am.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Look at that
And there's
smile.
Tavi
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Let's see. And this is
That's
Who is that?
Yeah, that's Papathini. No, that's So that's
amazing.
May of 2001. First time I came to LA, and my mom and I looked at USC that weekend because I was thinking about coming down here to go to college. I was just about to be a senior in high school.
I love that.
And I remember that day being so nervous, and I played the Tres Pequeñas Sevillanas from the Rodrigo suite, and I played the first 16 bars, and Parkening stopped me, and he said, "Are you listening to a lot of jazz? Because you're swinging your eighth notes." And we worked on just that, we worked on that just that line, and he tried to get me to play it really even, and I was so nervous being in his presence, and you played, and yeah, Todd, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
This month.
That's a great
It's
story.
interesting, and
Yeah.
I remember this master class, and I just got hammered
Oh,
because
man.
I
Yeah.
started the Concierto de Aranjuez, and instead of starting it the beginning first movement with a single finger, the classical boring way,
Yeah.
I put some rascados in there, and
Oh,
Christopher was
man.
like, no, not here, sorry,
Great.
that is improper.
He was in an interesting mood
Coming
that
from
day. I mean,
Segovia.
it was
Yeah.
also I had heard that the Parkening master classes were like these epic 300 people in the audience, like in Montana, him doing that. So I was anticipating playing, and I remember really coaching myself before that. And then we get there, and it's just smaller gathering, but it's all guitar players. And you were there, and we had met. Patrick Anderson was there. And then, boy, that was definitely the weekend where I was like, okay, LA, I really love LA, and I want to go to USC.
That's amazing.
And yep.
Yeah. So my take on how classical guitar influenced me. Actually, my first influence is Andre Segovia. So I saw Andre Segovia when I was 6. This was before I started playing guitar. My father took me to see him. My father's a guitarist as well, as jazz guitarist. And this was at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. One man walks out on stage without a microphone, and it was like all this magic ensued.
Yeah.
Right. Just bowled me over and captivated me. And also sort of pointed me toward the spiritual dimension of music, which is, it transcends us, it takes us to places. And the storytelling, of course, of Segovia was amazing when he played. So I got to meet him afterward.
Wow.
And I remember his hand touching my cheek, and he said, "Good boy." That's all he said. Good boy. And then the next year,
Little did he know, he had no idea what he
that's
just
right.
said.
He didn't.
Oh,
He
my
nothing.
A statement out of ignorance, huh?
Oh, that's good.
And I also remember the size of his fingers were huge.
Oh,
They
yeah.
were really plump.
Yeah.
They were like sausages, like
Oh, man.
really big.
That's funny.
And then the next year, I actually saw him again. And after that first experience, then I went home and I wanted to study guitar. So
Right.
at that time I was not studying classical guitar. I was studying, basically the fingerboard, how to, play Red River Valley on
Yes.
the first string,
Right.
and how to read. And then the next year I went and saw Segovia again. We happened to sit next to his manager, and his manager saw how captivated I was. Let's go meet the maestro.
Wow.
Yeah, so I met him again, so got his signature on my program. Anyway, that sound has always been in my head. That to be able to have the kind of control of the instrument in which the timbre and the attack and the phrasing and the ability to sort of let phrases contract and expand has always been with me. And it's not necessarily a big part of a lot of jazz guitarists' pursuit, especially initially. The masters, of course, had that. But there's something about the discipline of classical guitar that looks in a really detailed way into those parameters of the music, which are just as important as the notes. And, I find that a lot of young jazz guitarists, or rock guitarists for the most part as well, are focused on playing fast and sort of skirt those issues, So anyway, that music really informs my playing. And actually, when I went to USC and I started studying classical guitar in a much more serious way, studied with Jim Smith, and Scott Tennant was in the program at the time, and Bill Cannengeiser, and so I was really hearing some high-level classical guitar playing. And I remember going through the Bach chorales, reading them on guitar. Of course, you can't put them on guitar because the range is too wide, but studying everything, studying the Chaconne. What is this chord, you know? From a theoretical perspective, rather than just reading the notes. And this was so informative because it taught me about voice leading. That's really where I learned voice leading.
Oh, yeah.
From Bach's chorales. It's all there. It's all there.
Yeah, it is.
You know?
Yeah, it's amazing how it was just birthed out of that.
Absolutely.
And it continues. It's so powerful. It's like the sun. It just keeps revolving around, you know. Yeah.
Well, isn't it amazing how Bach continues to amaze us now? Yeah. In spite of the musical progresses we've made, we still go back to Bach and like mind blown, right?
I find it funny too that when Bach was alive, if you walked up to somebody on the street in Germany and said, "Do you know Bach?" They would, "Oh yeah, sure, Johann Christian Bach." You know, they would have known his father, but his music ended up in the long run being the one that we're all like, "Whoa," you know. And it's amazing, and it can be intimidating as a jazz player to sit down and go over that stuff again. Sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm not worthy, but it's really great music, and yeah, like you said, Larry, that shapes us playing the total instrument, you know, because in jazz we can get very wrapped up in just playing this as a single note instrument, which is also cool. It's very cool to do that, but the total instrument, the total music behind all of this.
That's right.
It connects the dots for sure. Yeah.
Can you guys talk about maybe one deeply formative experience in your development as a musician? I remember personally,
Yes.
I had my first guitar teacher. The first week he asked me to do a bar chord, F major, in the first jerk. and you know, I went to the lesson and he smelled like cigarettes and he was not invested, and it was a horrific experience for a little kid, you know.
Yeah.
But then there was a young man from Germany who came to my hometown and taught me how to read music, and we would spend hours together and he would smile and have a great time. And that memory, I think, set me on a course as a guitarist. Do you have anything like that for yourselves, or?
Oh yeah. Larry, what do you?
Well, as I said before, the Segovia experience was the #1 formative experience. I would say the number two on that list would be playing duo with Charlie Hayden.
Oh, wow.
And he was doing, at that time, he was doing a steady gig at the Comeback Inn, which was a small club in Venice. And very small club. But he was playing with a blind pianist at the time named Henry Butler, pianist from New Orleans, who was fantastic. And Henry couldn't make one of the evenings. I was 20 at the time. And Charlie had met me because I had been going, while I was a student at Cal Arts, I'd been visiting, while I was a student at USC, I'd been visiting Cal Arts because a friend of mine, very close friend named Scott Colley, bass player, was going there. And Scott said, "You should come up here and experience Charlie Hayden."
Oh.
And so that was the first experience in which I saw the complete power of the music, because I really lost all sense of myself. This is not coming from an egotistical perspective, but that evening was perfect. It was, and I was not playing the instrument. Something else was playing the instrument.
Wow.
Something else came through me, and the only thing I can attribute that to was, first of all, Charlie Hayden's incredible support, his beautiful pitch, beautiful sound. It feels like this giant embrace. And it's the first experience that I'd had of a transcendental nature. And I've never had an experience since then on that level. And part of me wants to go back to that. What is that part of ourselves that can go from A to B? Because I know much more than I knew back then when I was 20. How is it that I could put all these pieces together? What is that? What part of ourselves is that? And I think that's the part of this art form that we're seeking to get to, and it's not a linear motion. It's not from A to B. You have to take these backdoor approaches somehow to get there, right? Mm-hmm. It's very and it's mystical, and it's transcendental, and it's real. Mm-hmm. You know, but you can only know that it's real by experiencing it. I experienced it one time to a complete extent, and then from then on, it's been like dabbling in it, little moments,
snippets of sublimity.
Yeah. And to me, that's, how can you explain that? How? Because I know more now. Why is it that I have not experienced it to that same extent? Knowledge is not it. Yeah. Knowledge is part of it. We have to inform our playing in a certain way, but there's something beyond that. Mm-hmm. There's another part of our makeup, you know? So that's the spiritual dimension of music.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm not sure that we could handle being at that level of sublimity and experiencing that all the time, because it would stop being special, right?
That's right.
The idea of being, a peak or an apogee in our musical experience is that it's a peak. And then we continue to chase after that, and that's what keeps music interesting, right?
It's true.
We want to go back to those experiences. And
that's right.
And realizing that it comes so unexpectedly, you can't plan for that and say, okay, this is going to be the day I go there. This is the gig I'm going to. And sometimes we go on a gig or we have a performance that we want that is very special to us,
right? And
we go on it and we build ourselves up, and sometimes it's a little anticlimactic. And sometimes I get a little nervous because I'm anticipating something happening, and I feel forced. Mm-hmm. So I've learned as I become a more mature musician to just be in the moment, and that each performance, each opportunity to play this instrument is a gift. And I mean, we've learned that this year. Each performance, each time to play with someone is a unique moment, and just be in that moment and don't anticipate it. I think that goes with my memory too, like of when I was in high school. And I moved to Portland with my mom, and I started going and sitting in at clubs up there, because Dan Ballmer, my teacher, said, hey, come bring your guitar, come down and hang and play. And I got to play with the maestro Mel Brown, who's like our impresario of the jazz scene in Portland. Every young musician from Esperanza Spalding to Chris Bodie has come up through playing with Mel at Jimmy Mac's and at the Hobbit and Atwater's, all the great clubs that were around in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And I went to play with Mel, and I remember playing Dahoud with him, which is kind of a tricky head. And it was bright, and I was 15 or 16, and I was just barely hanging, And I remember sweating bullets and just really like this and nervous, and I couldn't hear myself because I was plugged into a weird amp. And we're in this kind of restaurant that was over by Portland Airport on the Columbia called Salty's on the Columbia. We're playing. And I could hear Mel kind of laughing and having a good time, and I'm hanging in there. And this pianist, Andrei Kataev, who's a great Russian pianist, was playing with us, and Ed Bennett, who you know. So we get done, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I am just being like trying to run with the Titans here, and I am such a baby, And I remember Mel coming up and putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, this is exactly where you belong, man. Just keep coming back every week. We're so happy you came. He said, just bring a different, I know we kind of put that tune on you this week, and maybe you didn't quite know. Just every week come back with a new tune that you're working on, and sit in and call it. And you are always, this is exactly where you belong, man. And I remember thinking whoa, okay. And so I went back. And I kept going back, and my mom, after a long day of public school teaching, we'd get in the car, I'd put on a nice shirt, and we'd go out there, and she'd spend money on a nice dinner at this restaurant, single mom, and we would sit there, and I would watch them play, and then towards the end of the night, I'd get up there and play, and each week it started feeling like I was hanging. And they treated me like a peer, they didn't treat me they didn't talk down to me, there was no bad vibes. And that was the beginning of this idea of my life purpose is to mentor people and help people and teach people and go forward with the music, because I guess I do belong here. And it was weird. I'm from the sticks. I'm from Eastern Oregon. I love jazz, but I always felt a little socially awkward around other jazz musicians because they come from cities and they're different ethnicities than me. And Mel was like, man, this is right where you belong. And that changed my life.
I love that, John.
Yeah. Mel, have you ever played with Mel?
I haven't, but I've met Mel.
Yeah, and you know Ed Bennett, of course. And
That's
yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That there's an older generation that's supportive like that. Wasn't always the case in my generation.
Yeah.
When I dealt with a lot of older musicians, there was a mix. They could be great musicians, but they were bitter about their circumstances.
Right.
And they took it out on you.
Oh, I see.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes.
So they just threw you in the fire.
Occasionally.
Yeah,
you know,
No
they were
grace.
just curmudgeonly.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know, and I never got that experience as much. Like Russell Malone told me about being on the road with Jimmy Smith when he was really young, and Jimmy every night would just throw him these really obscure tunes and say, "Man, you need to practice. Like, you don't know this, you need to do it." And very old school, just battered, never complimentary at all. Nothing. Russell said he felt like for years he wasn't doing anything right.
Yeah.
And that's how he learned from Jimmy Smith, you know, who played with Wes. Can you imagine playing with somebody like that?
all those older generation guys, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, talk about tough love.
Yeah.
You know, in the East Coast. I mean, really, it was a harsh environment, and of course, there are always going to be people that rise above that and benefit from that. But then there are other people that maybe were talented that sort of went away because they lacked that support. You know.
Right.
Yep.
It's amazing the power of affirmation.
Yeah.
Right. We all thrive so much more.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
I think today we struggle too. Like, I know that there's been a lot of discussion just culturally in our country, in America, about how young people should, you know, really take initiative and do stuff versus like my generation being told how special we are and everything. And I feel very fortunate in that the music world really showed me the power of when you take initiative and when you work on something, when you practice, that there's a result of that, and there's a peer group you can connect to that's multi-generational, and you know there is so much to learn, but you have to put the work in. You've got to do it. Nobody's going to do it for you, and you aren't just going to be given that. And it's interesting because as musicians, sometimes people say you're so talented, and it's such a nice compliment for someone to say. But a lot of times I want to say, well, thank you, but you know, practiced a lot, you know, and you can too. And you can too. If you want to play guitar, just get with a good mentor and practice and work hard at it, and you can get there.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
There's a right way to deliver the message.
Yeah.
Right? You focus on the aspects that aren't working, and it's not personal. It's just you need to work on this.
Yeah, and clear and direct, and I remember Larry, some of our first lessons at Cal Arts. I was so excited. And we spent, I think, the first couple weeks just playing tunes in your office. And then I remember one week you're like, okay, all right, let's really work on this, John. Let's really work on your two-part playing. Your comping. Let's work on this. And I remember when you opened up like that to me, it meant a lot because you know you're such a complimentary guy, and everybody loves your presence is so positive. And I was like, yes. I want to get down to this. I want to know what the magma is inside of Larry Koonse's teaching, and I want it to come out like a volcano and flow like lava upon my my precious self, you know? And here I am, melted down, you know, because of it. Like iron ore. Anyway, yeah, man.
As you guys talk about those like really special musical moments, I want to say that even though what you played this morning may be old hat for you, you improvise it, but it may not have reached that level for you personally. From an audience point of view, we get to experience those moments even when you don't. And that's what's really cool about performances. Right. As you guys were playing at the beginning, I was here having a grand time, getting energized by what I was listening to. Even though I was busy mixing and stuff like that. And so every performance is special. It may not be as special for you, but it will touch somebody out there in a way that we can't even fathom or anticipate.
I totally agree. And playing with John, of course, it's always a high-level experience for me. So, you know, there's a spectrum, it's like you have peak experiences, and then when you play with really gifted players like John, who takes care of time in a beautiful way, you feel it in your body. John, his strumming just kills me. Just his time sense and his sound. So you feel that support. You know it's gonna reach a healthy percentage of that spectrum. It's gonna be a high level experience. right? And then occasionally you get like sublimity, you know, and that's what we always shoot for. And you never know when that's gonna emerge.
Yeah.
Can't plan it.
It's so true, man. And isn't it funny too how, especially in jazz, seeing you at the Potato was so awesome the other week. It was a very emotional experience for me because it was the first time I got to see a live show in a year. And I'm sure there were a lot of moments where I was just sitting there and in the zone, man, with what you were playing. Sounded so great with Jason and Darek. You guys have such a connection, that rhythm section. And then talking to you afterwards, you're like, yeah, I'm feeling rusty. I'm feeling like I'm warming up. It's interesting how I didn't pick up on it at all. And I'm a guitar player. You'd think someone like me would be able to pick up on, oh yeah, that's that. But that's the interpretive nature of this and the projection of what we do.
Absolutely.
Which is it's so important. And I hope more people get to, maybe through the pandemic, more people have experienced that because they've been getting deeper into music, culture, food, wine, whatever. But you know, it's like that kind of experience. Yeah, man, it was, boy.
That's why it's important what Tavi's sharing.
Yeah.
That, you know, from outside of our experience, it's a high level experience for a lot of people, and it's raising them up, and it's important for us to always be reminded about that.
True.
You know?
Very true. Yeah. Delight, man.
Very cool. We have a couple of questions from some of our students.
Cool.
Number one, people want to know, what kind of guitars are you guys playing? Tell us a little bit about these instruments. How long have you had them?
Oh man,
Why settle on one guitar?
I love this story. You want to go first with yours, Larry? This is a famous guitar right here.
Sure. This is a guitar designed by a luthier, or luthier, if I'm being proper, named Roger Boris. And this guitar was designed for a guitarist named Barry Galbraith, great guitarist back east. And the number is BG100, the model number. It's an arch top. And Roger, you know, apprenticeship is big in the luthier world. So Roger was an apprentice of a great maker named D'Acquisto, who was an apprentice of D'Angelico.
Yes.
So there's a lineage passed down, and Roger was one of D'Acquisto's prized apprentices. And my teacher, Jimmy Weibel, who was an amazing guitarist, who passed away about 10 years ago at the age of 87, who was basically a contemporary of Charlie Christian. That's another amazing aspect of what we do.
I know.
You know.
And you got to study with him.
Right. And Jimmy was an incredible guitarist, and he was the first dealer for Roger Boris on the West Coast. So he urged me very strongly to play this guitar. I was playing an ES-175 at the time.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Gibson ES-175 is a great guitar. But for me, the sustain and the evenness of this instrument was a better fit for how I hear music.
Yeah, and you know, back when this instrument was built in the early 80s, there weren't a multitude of luthiers or guitar companies. You either played a Gibson or an Epiphone, maybe an Ibanez, and then, you know, you have Jimmy D'Acquisto. And those were very, very, very expensive guitars.
That's
continue to be very expensive instruments.
Yeah.
Nowadays, there's such a multitude. And our instruments actually are close siblings in a way. It's funny because my guitar is built by luthier Stephen Marchione, who's in Texas. But he was in New York for a long time, and he worked for Rudy Pensa at Pensa Sur Guitars, and he studied with John Monteleone, who studied with Jimmy D'Acquisto. And it's in this lineage. And Stephen worked on Jim Hall's D'Acquisto, and this guitar that Larry's playing too, the laminate 16 body maple top, was designed with the same laminate plates that Jimmy D'Acquisto had to build Jim's guitar.
That's right.
So this guitar was designed around Jim's D'Acquisto a little bit, and this one is a little more of a contemporary take on that, in that there's a third sound hole here, which is really fun to be able to hear myself acoustically. The pickup is a little different, and it's more of an acoustic instrument. And I had this built for me in 2017 into 18, and it's become my main axe. I have an L5, which I love too, but the L5 is more of a real traditional West tone, which is totally in my camp. And I've come to realize that as an artist, as a jazz player, I kind of hear myself two ways. I hear sort of this more acoustic kind of thing with this guitar, and a little bit more of the electric, milky kind of thing with the L5. So, yeah, it's funny. These guitars are actually a little related and that how they're
true.
and how they were inspired to
Yeah.
play. Yeah, archtops. So these are archtop guitars.
Marchione is an amazing builder.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
and so is Roger, and they're
Yeah.
both currently still building. Right, Roger's still building.
Yeah.
yeah, they're fantastic. If
Yeah.
you can find them, they're rare. Both of these guys pretty much just build to order. You know.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have a question here from one of the students. I don't have an archtop, but I have a Strat.
Yeah.
Can I play jazz on a Strat? How do you play jazz on a Strat?
It might be a little more difficult on a Strat than a Tele.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
There's a great guitarist, Ed
Bickert.
Bickert, of course. Ed Bickert, who played with Paul Desmond, that played beautiful jazz guitar on a Telecaster. In terms of a Strat, maybe John has some perspective because he's the EQ guy.
Well, honestly, this is such an important question. How do I get a jazz tone on blank for us guitarists? It's a weird instrument question because you don't hear saxophone players say, how do I get a jazz sound on a Selmer versus a LeBlanc? Like, we have a unique family of instruments that we play. Most people don't have an archtop right away because they're kind of more expensive. They're kind of a one-trick pony in some ways. So what I always tell my students is the sound first comes from here. We need to hear what the sound is. And there's a wide range of jazz tone, from Grant Green, which is more middle-y kind of sound, mid sound, to like your tone, which is really warm and robust and dark and rich, to just there's such a Herb Ellis, which is kind of a thinner, more like country kind of sound.
That's true.
So what you want to do first is identify what sound is really going for you. And the short answer is yes, you can definitely get a jazz sound on a Strat. You can get a jazz sound on a Jazzmaster, on a Rickenbacker. I've heard guys get wonderful dark, warm tones on anything, but the reason they have it isn't because they figured out some magic combination of the dials. It's because they hear the sound first.
Yeah.
And really getting out there and playing with other musicians will give you good feedback on if you're getting that sound or not. Because if you're just playing by yourself, you may not actually know if your sound is thin. And recording yourself is really important.
Let me ask you this, John.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get a warm, round sound on
Yeah.
a Strat,
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's in the hands and in the conception,
Yeah.
first of all.
Yeah.
But secondly, how would you suggest that they adjust their
Just some
treble,
settings.
mids,
Yeah. Well, I think
bass?
one good thing to understand, if everybody can see this, there's a reason why Larry and I have a pickup right here next to the neck. And the pickup isn't back here, okay? Because back here we get more of a sol ponticello sound, and here we get more of a sol tasto kind of sound.
Right.
And so a Strat has 3 pickups. There's one close to the bridge, kind of one in the middle, and one in the neck. And what you want to do is really just isolate that front pickup. So make sure your switch is up in the front. Telecaster, same thing too. And then from there, each Strat has different pickup sounds, so you want to really use that tone knob. And the amplifier has a lot to do with it too, because if you're using a large amp like a Fender Twin or a Super, you're going to get a very boomy sound, and it's very hard to get a focused sound, which we want. So my other suggestion would be find the smallest amp you can find, and like a Princeton or an old Polytone or the Henriksons, which sound great, or Quilter, something small that focuses the sound. That will really help. And I've had students bring their Strats into lesson, plug into my Henriksen, and they're like, that's the jazz sound. So a lot of it can have to do with the amp.
Absolutely.
But make sure you isolate that front pickup. And if you have a very, very beginner guitar that only has a bridge pickup on it, that's going to be really difficult to get a big, fat, warm sound out of, because it's purposely meant for just, kind of funky kind of sounds.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Excellent
Wonderful.
advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing too, lastly, in jazz, it's becoming more and more and more accepted that people are showing up with Fenders and Strats. So many people are playing Telecasters now, but I would say 20 years ago it wasn't the case.
That's right.
20 years ago, you'd want to show up with a 335 or an archtop. If you showed up with a Strat, you'd be kind of like, what are you, a rock guy? Now, it's more and more accepted. So don't be bashful if you're learning jazz and you only have a Strat. And there's also, thankfully, some really great value-priced archtops out there if you can get into that market. And it is worth it to get one if you're playing a lot of jazz, because it will definitely give you the right tool for the job
Absolutely.
to get a jazz tone.
Great. We have a few more questions.
Yeah.
One from Edsel.
Mm-hmm.
Edsel is asking, it could be pretty intimidating to transition from classical to jazz because it feels like a different universe. How do people make the transition? How do they not only enjoy listening, but actually start playing some jazz guitar?
Boy.
Yeah, Edsel, it's an excellent question. I think part of it has to do with, first of all, listening to the music and loving the music. Listening is a really important aspect because then you get a sense of how the music feels. So in terms of putting a fine point on it, I've taught for over 30 years at this point. And my approach, especially with classical guitarists, is to get them to actually play some arranged repertoire initially, and also to give them some theory, a little bit of theory at the beginning that allows them to sort of explore the freedom of improvisation, maybe in a really controlled way.
Yeah.
So, for example, you know, if you're new to this, to understand the connection between pitches and chords, how they connect, what's the correlation between those things, and maybe to just deal with one chord at a time. I think there's one lesson that I have. It's called it's the Little Sunflower. Mm-hmm. It's a tune by Freddie Hubbard, which is very limited in terms of its harmonic motion. Right, stays on D minor forever. So, you know, within that context, with a groove and given a series of 7 pitches, which is a scale, and maybe even how to organize some chromatic material, you can actually experience improvisation and the freedom that comes out of being able to sort of make choices in the moment, with a scaled down version of a progression.
Yeah.
To jump in and tackle giant steps or any number of American songbook standards is another kind of challenge, and I think that you take baby steps to get there.
That's exactly right. Because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And the idea of transitioning from one genre to another, for somebody who's a very accomplished, say, classical player, you might think, oh, well, you know, I've a really great, solid guitar player, so I'm going to be also just move over now to jazz. Well, the reality is we're really going into the Grand Canyon and coming up. Like, the distance is just right over there, but you really have to go down into there. That's a visual I tell my students who are more advanced. And it's frustrating because I have some students that it takes years to really get a style down to the point where you can say hang and really be sounding like a jazz player. But that's what's fun about Elite Guitarist too, is I feel like the lessons you and I have crafted give students that bite at a time. Like, let's just get that piece down, get it under their fingers, and at the same time that you're working on that, you're listening to the music. Identify who your favorite musicians are on your instrument and also not on the guitar, trumpet, saxophone. And I would say that it's about 75% understanding of the sound of the genre, the application of our unique theoretical concepts, and about 25% technique. And that you can't learn all this technique to voila, sound like a jazz guitarist. You really have to listen to the music. And it's, again, one of the fun reasons why it's been fun to do Elite Guitarist. It's been a unique challenge for me to be like, if I was someone who wanted to get into jazz, how would I do that from just like right here, from this point?
Right.
You know? Yeah.
It's also important, Edsel, to remember that you're not really discarding all the musical aspects of what you bring to music as a classical guitarist. Mm-hmm. They're all still present with jazz. Dynamics, sound, time, you know, all that stuff is basically the same. There's just a different lilt to it. It's like it's like when I first started exploring playing Irish reels, you know, there's a different lilt to it. There's a different way of, it's like accents when you're speaking a language,
exactly.
Right? It's a cultural thing.
Spices.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The taste, the texture.
It's a cooking analogy.
Very cooking analogy,
Yeah.
you know, or like going from tennis to racquetball. They seem conceptually like very similar things, but they're not. They're very different techniques. And
Right.
Different court, different ball, different racket.
Right. So that's where the listening comes in.
Exactly.
That's the equivalent of if you're a chef, you have to taste the food. You can't get it from a book.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Great question, Edsel.
And on the Elite Guitarist platform, we have something for everybody. So can you guys talk a little bit about the arranged repertoire? Let's say some classical players, they just want to get a couple of standards under their fingers. Can you talk about some of these repertoire tutorials that you guys have done as well?
Yeah. So it's been really fun. I've picked and identified some standards, which I feel like are really great to get down first, because standards are our currency in jazz. The repertoire is this American songbook, in addition to other types of tunes that are more specific to the composers who wrote them and those artists. And I identified early on, again, what would be the standards I would want to learn right away, you know. And some of those standards unlock certain clues for us about how we look at other tunes, and harmonically how we look at other tunes. Like, say, playing a tune that has a lot of 2-5-1 chord progressions in it will help you play hundreds and hundreds of other tunes. So I've tried to break it down with my arranging for lead guitarist, to where it's very clear that there's a melodic component that we play, and then there's a chordal component that we play, so that if you perform these little pieces by yourself, as we say in a chord melody fashion, it would sound like, oh, I'm playing something. And that can be very difficult for young jazz students to get, is this idea of playing something in its entirety that sounds like it's presentable, like almost as a recital. Because, like you said, Larry, there's so many conceptual things that we need to understand in order to be able to improvise. Because improvising is just making things up on the spot. So hopefully by learning some of these arrangements I've posted, it gives you the idea of, oh, I'm going to get this down. Maybe I can add something. Maybe I can put an extra note in here. Maybe I can play those notes at the same time as that next chord. And it's been exciting to just like share some of these with some students and then see what they do with them. Because you have permission, as our good friend Matt Wilson, the great drummer, says, you are allowed to do this with the music, you know, right?
I love John's lessons. He always sort of consolidates a little idea and then demonstrates it musically. And just from watching his lessons, I feel like I can use those devices immediately, because he really hones in on something. I have to say that I have some arrangements that are very specific in terms of like writing out all the rhythms, so that a guitarist can understand how to take a song from the American songbook, which when you look at it on paper, it looks very flat.
Yeah.
Like, so for example, I have one song that I delve into that, with a specific arrangement on Bye Bye Blackbird. So when you look at Bye Bye Blackbird, you have 4 quarter notes on a lead sheet. Da, 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 dee, da, da, and then a half note right there. And you already know, just by how I'm singing this, that it's falling flat. There's really no juice there. So the improviser has to, with material in hand, which is what I give you with this specific arrangement, come up with some rhythmic language in the moment. So if I just go, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, dee, da, da, doo, dee, da. So there's a lot of stuff there. So you know, short notes, da, syncopation, da, 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 right? On the end of the beat, moving into it, moves the music in the right way.
Yeah.
And, you know, vibrato too, you know, it's like all those things that you look into as a classical guitarist. You're always looking into phrasing, you know, how to play short notes. Maybe you're not exploring how to feel 2 and 4 with syncopation. Ba, ba, da, da, dee, da, da. But the fact is, when you have the notes in front of you and you're given the freedom to sort of determine some of this stuff, some of the process could be actually singing it like I'm singing it right now, and then translating it to the guitar. So right. So syncopation.
Yeah, and it's just like dancing. It's just like, I got the pulse, I'm just going to start moving. And it can be a little intimidating at first. You're like, can I really do this? What, am I going to look funny? Am I going to sound funny if I syncopate this?
Yeah.
And it's so fun to just be like, I can do that. I can use those instincts and yeah, it's like, okay, what's the difference between a chord note and an eighth note, and we need to know those things, and sometimes it's a combination of knowing that, but trusting just your feel, and that's a great way to describe that, man.
Yeah.
I've seen you talk a lot about that tune like that, and that it's a great 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper for a student. Just like, all right, let's start moving this around a bit. How do we make that dance?
Right.
How do you make it come alive?
How do you make it come alive?
Because
Exactly.
yeah, you know, these songs are interpreted through the lens of being a jazz musician. It's not like we're singing them in the musical that they might have belonged to
Right.
at that
Right.
time. Yeah.
That's right.
So that's a great point. Great question too.
Great. I think we're drawing close to the end here. We got to wrap it up. But
Okay, yeah.
guys,
I
I'm
could
just
go
gonna-
on forever.
I have been kind of the incognito voice here. Just want to show my face. Guys, we're just so fortunate to have you on the Elite Guitarist platform. I
Thanks, man.
feel like the resources that you guys have developed, the depth, and just the expansiveness of it are unequaled. And it's a
Thank you,
direct
Tommy.
portrayal of your skill and commitment as individual musicians. And can you guys play us out?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And if I can add one thing, just to first of all, Tavi's one of my heroes. I feel so fortunate to be involved with this website. One thing I would mention along the lines of that last question is that Beyond the Basics is really for those students that want to dig deeper. If you don't want to dig deeper and you want to deal with some lighter material, delve into some of John's specific arrangements, some of my specific arrangements. It's all written out for you. You don't have to make any choices other than sort of just learning the material and having fun with it immediately. You don't need theory or any of that stuff. But for those of you that do want to scratch beneath the surface, there's a lot of material on the site.
Exactly. Yeah, and reach out. We appreciate you all being here, and yeah, thank you, Tavi. It's a delight to be a part of this team. So
Yep.
thank you guys so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Do you want to bring this one in, or should I bring this one
Yeah.
in?
Why, yeah. How about I'll bring it in?
Okay.
So we're gonna do this John Lewis tune called Django, which is for Django Reinhardt, and we recorded it with Jeff Goldblum and Miley Cyrus. Funny enough. Not crazy, kind of weird arrangement, fun arrangement, very cool. But Grant Green, Idle Moments is a great recording of this tune. There's been lots of Milt Jackson recorded this, a lot of great versions
Joe
of
Pass.
it. Yeah. That's a fun tune to play duo. Yeah, Larry. All right. Have a good Friday.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
See you guys.